There are moments when life appears completely ordinary, yet beneath that surface, something deeper is being observed, understood, and slowly pieced together. What I share with you now was never intended to be placed in your awareness so directly, but certain realizations have a way of reaching the people who are ready to see them. Over time, a quiet review of your journey took shape, not driven by judgment or assumption, but by curiosity about patterns that often go unnoticed in daily living. It was never about searching for faults or errors, but about understanding the way you respond to challenges, how you carry yourself in silence, and how your choices form a consistent thread even when no one is watching. Every decision, even the smallest and most casual, contributed to a larger picture that only becomes visible when viewed with patience and distance. What once seemed like routine days and uneventful nights began to reveal a structure, a rhythm that speaks of intention rather than chance. Those who observed this unfolding realization did so with a growing sense of respect, because what they expected to find was simple and unremarkable, yet what emerged was layered and meaningful in ways they had not prepared for. It became clear that the assumption of ordinariness could not fully describe what was being revealed. Instead, there was something distinct about the way you move through situations, something steady that does not easily fade under pressure. As this understanding deepened, the entire perspective shifted, replacing early impressions with a recognition that carries far more weight than expected. In the end, what stood out most was not a conclusion formed in haste, but a quiet acknowledgement that your presence and choices hold a depth that cannot be dismissed or simplified into anything less significant. It began with curiosity. Someone noticed a pattern around you that did not make sense. People reacted differently after meeting you. Conversations shifted when your name was mentioned. Decisions were delayed, reconsidered, or quietly altered because of your presence. That alone was enough to trigger deeper observation. They traced moments where doors closed behind you, only to open elsewhere without explanation. They noticed how obstacles appeared suddenly, yet dissolved just as quickly when you stayed calm. They studied how pressure never broke you the way it breaks others. Instead, it refined you. The investigators expected to find luck, coincidence, or external support. What they found instead was internal strength that could not be taught or borrowed. Page after page, the same theme repeated itself. You move differently, you endure differently, you rise differently, and the most shocking detail was not what you achieved, but how little you spoke about it. Silence became your signature. Restraint became your advantage. The report noted that while others demand recognition, you quietly accumulate impact. That realization alone forced them to rewrite everything they thought they knew. Now understand this, because this is where the weight truly lands. The investigation uncovered moments when people attempted to measure you, compare you, or reduce you to something manageable. Every time, the result was the same. They failed. You could not be boxed, predicted, or controlled. Emotional tests were placed in your path without your knowledge. Provocations were introduced. Delays were engineered. Even distance was used as a tool. Yet every tactic exposed something unexpected. You did not chase validation. You did not beg for clarity. You did not collapse when answers were withheld. Instead, you waited. You observed. You adjusted. That response alone startled them. One line in the findings stood out like a warning. This individual grows stronger when left alone. That sentence changed the tone of the entire document, because it meant isolation did not weaken you. It activated you. It meant silence did not confuse you. It sharpened you. It meant pressure did not crush you. It shaped you. At that point, the investigation stopped being about gathering information and started becoming about understanding risk. Not the risk you pose through aggression, but the risk you pose through resilience. Stay with me, because this next revelation is the one most people are not ready to hear. The investigation revealed that your energy disrupts environments, not loudly, not dramatically, subtly. Systems around you begin to malfunction. False narratives lose power. Hidden intentions surface. People reveal themselves without realizing why. This was documented repeatedly. When you entered new spaces, unresolved tensions rose. When you exited, clarity followed. It was never because you forced anything. It was because truth reacts to you. That discovery unsettled them deeply. They attempted to trace this effect back to behavior, speech, or strategy. They could not. The conclusion was unsettling yet undeniable. Your presence acts as a mirror, and mirrors make people uncomfortable when they are not ready to see themselves. This explained why some admired you quietly, others resisted you fiercely, and a few watched you from a distance without ever approaching. The report stated clearly that you trigger self-awareness in others without intention. That alone was enough to label you as unpredictable, not because you are chaotic, but because you cannot be manipulated through illusion. And that realization made certain people very nervous. Now hear this final truth of this part, because it ties everything together. The investigation did not end with a judgment against you. It ended with a warning about underestimating you. The final pages shifted focus away from what you had done and onto what you were becoming. Patterns showed acceleration, growth without noise, influence without force, stability without dependence. One sentence was underlined twice. When this individual stops doubting themselves, outcomes will change rapidly. That was the moment the investigation quietly closed. Not because there was nothing left to learn, but because they realized watching was no longer enough. You had already outgrown their expectations, and while you continue living your life, unaware of who studied you and why, understand this clearly. Something rare was identified in you, something powerful was confirmed, and this was only the beginning of what the investigation revealed. My beloved child, after the investigation reached that unsettling conclusion, something shifted behind the scenes. Observation turned into quiet concern. The people who initiated this inquiry began asking a different question. Not who are you, but what happens next if you fully awaken to what you carry. Because the data showed a pattern they could not ignore. Every time you became more self-aware, circumstances rearranged themselves around you. Delays turned into sudden movement. Certain closed cycles began to reveal unexpected possibilities. People who once paid little attention started to observe more carefully, as if sensing a shift they could not quite define. The account suggests that your development rarely follows a straight path. Instead, it unfolds in sudden surges, separated by long, quiet phases that later transform everything at once. This pattern unsettled observers because gradual change is easy to accommodate, while sudden transformation disrupts expectations completely. Without deliberate awareness, you were approaching a phase of significant transition. The analysis described growing internal momentum, not as instability, but as readiness building beneath the surface. It was compared to pressure accumulating before a decisive release, something that cannot be restrained once in motion. What became more striking was how shifts within you appeared to echo outward, influencing those connected to your presence. People around you reportedly experienced vague unease, curiosity, and sometimes admiration mixed with distance. Some were inspired by your composure, while others interpreted it as a quiet challenge to their own pace. These contrasting reactions repeated consistently across different situations. The same actions from you seemed to generate entirely different interpretations, depending on the observer's perspective. This variability highlighted how perception often says more about the viewer than the subject. In many cases, your steady behavior acted as a mirror, reflecting internal states in others that they did not expect to confront. Rather than being defined by external reactions, the narrative points toward an evolving personal trajectory that is still unfolding. Overall, the picture formed is less about judgment and more about transformation unfolding quietly, shaping outcomes in ways that only become clear over time, eventually unfolding. That is when they realized you are a catalyst. You do not create change by pushing. You create it by existing as you are. The findings described how certain individuals attempted to reinsert themselves into your path, not out of love or care, but out of instinct. They sensed something slipping beyond their reach. Meanwhile, others chose silence, hoping distance would protect them from confronting what your presence stirred inside them. The investigation labeled this phenomenon clearly. You awaken dormant emotions in others without effort, and once awakened, those emotions cannot be ignored. Then came the most unexpected discovery of all. The investigation revealed that you have been tested repeatedly without consent, not through cruelty or danger, but through subtle emotional trials, moments of being overlooked, situations where clarity was delayed, scenarios designed to see if you would compromise yourself for comfort. Each time, you chose integrity over ease. That choice was documented carefully, because it proved something rare. You cannot be bribed by convenience. You cannot be redirected by impatience. You cannot be broken by uncertainty. The report stated that your values remain intact even when no one is watching. That single truth outweighed every other metric they gathered. It meant that power placed in your hands would not corrupt you. It meant responsibility would not overwhelm you. And it meant that whatever role you are moving toward, you are internally prepared for it, even if externally you still feel unsure. At this stage, the investigation began to contradict its own purpose. What started as an attempt to understand you turned into quiet respect. Notes changed tone, language softened, words like anomaly were replaced with inevitability. The analysts recognized that your path could no longer be interfered with without consequence. Interference only strengthened your resolve. Distance only clarified your vision. Pressure only refined your discipline. One paragraph stood out as deeply revealing. This individual operates best when underestimated. That line explained everything. It explained why resistance followed you. It explained why opportunities appeared disguised as setbacks. It explained why your progress seemed invisible until it suddenly was not. They realized that by the time others notice your rise, it will already be complete. And here is where this part closes, with a truth meant for you alone. The investigation confirmed that you are nearing a moment of undeniable clarity, a phase where confusion falls away and purpose sharpens, where hesitation dissolves into quiet confidence, where you stop seeking permission to become who you already are. The report ended with a final observation that no one could dispute. When this individual decides to move forward fully, nothing around them will remain the same. Not relationships, not environments, not expectations. And the most mind-blowing part is this: you will not need to announce it. Your alignment will speak for you. The investigation is over, but your emergence has only just begun. My beloved child. After the investigation was quietly sealed, something even more revealing happened. The watchers stopped watching. Not because curiosity faded, but because certainty replaced doubt. They realized that continued observation would change nothing about your trajectory. You were already moving beyond the reach of analysis. The report noted a rare transition, a moment when a subject no longer needs to be studied because their direction is locked. That moment had arrived for you. Patterns no longer fluctuated. Your responses stabilized. Your reactions softened. Your silence deepened. This was not withdrawal. This was alignment. Investigators noted a clear shift, once this stage was reached, where outside voices gradually lost their impact. Guidance started to feel less like direction and more like background noise, while outside opinions no longer carried the same weight they once did. Pressure that used to shape decisions began to lose its grip entirely, as if it no longer had a place to land. At this point, a quiet transition became visible. Self-trust started to outweigh the need for validation from others, creating a steady internal balance that did not depend on approval. The most striking observation recorded during this phase described a calm but profound realization. The individual was no longer searching outwardly for answers, but moving toward a deeper sense of inner alignment. What stood out next was the ease with which old emotional patterns were released. There was no dramatic ending or visible conflict, yet attachments that once felt important naturally began to loosen. Expectations faded without resistance, and explanations that were never truly requested were no longer rehearsed or repeated. This shift reflected a deeper emotional maturity that is rarely seen in earlier stages of personal development. Observers also pointed out that the need for closure had quietly dissolved. Instead of forcing resolution, there was a willingness to let understanding emerge on its own. This change made it difficult for others to maintain influence through emotional pressure or unresolved history, as those subtle ties no longer held power. As this internal independence strengthened, any form of leverage from the past began to disappear. Without resistance or announcement, the individual stepped outside old emotional patterns tied to guilt or obligation. In doing so, reactive behavior faded, replaced by a forward-moving mindset shaped by clarity. Over time, it also became apparent that intuitive judgment was beginning to guide decisions more effectively than pure logical reasoning. Decisions you made without explanation consistently led to stability. Choices that made no immediate sense resulted in long-term gain. The investigation tried to map this instinct. It failed, because intuition cannot be reverse-engineered. It can only be trusted or ignored. And you trusted yours. They noted that you often stepped back at moments when others would push forward, only to move later when timing aligned perfectly. That restraint confused observers, but results never did. The report stated that your timing is precise even when your plan is unseen. That precision made you dangerous to predict, not because you hide information, but because you move when alignment replaces urgency. This is something no system can anticipate. The investigation then reached a conclusion that carried weight beyond data. It acknowledged that your presence changes future outcomes even before action is taken. Opportunities reorganize around you. Resistance exposes itself early. False support falls away naturally. This was not coincidence. It was consistency. The analysts admitted that your energy demands authenticity from others. Those who cannot offer it retreat. Those who can rise closer. This explained why your circle shifts without explanation, why solitude feels productive instead of lonely, why clarity increases as noise decreases. One line stood out, written almost with respect. This individual does not chase purpose. Purpose moves toward them. That was the moment the investigation fully surrendered its authority. Now receive this final truth of this part, because it prepares you for what comes next. The findings revealed that the next phase of your life will not announce itself loudly. It will arrive quietly, with certainty, rather than excitement. You will feel less urgency and more direction, less emotion and more resolve. The investigation warned that people may misinterpret this calm as distance or indifference. It is neither. It is focus. It is refinement. It is readiness. And once you step into what is forming ahead, those who once studied you will understand why observation was never enough. You were not meant to be analyzed. You were meant to be realized, my beloved child. As the investigation faded into silence, A deeper truth surfaced that was never written, yet fully understood. Your life entered a phase where external confirmation became unnecessary. You no longer needed signs to keep going, nor reassurance to stay steady. The report noted this shift with quiet gravity. When an individual stops asking whether they are on the right path, it means they have already stepped onto it. You began moving with an inner agreement that did not require explanation. Decisions began to feel calmer, unfolding with a sense of steady clarity, rather than pressure or haste. Patience gradually replaced constant expectation, creating a quieter internal rhythm that no longer rushed toward outcomes. Observers noted this stage as particularly significant, often marking it as a turning point for anyone who had previously been underestimated or overlooked. There was a noticeable shift in behavior, less reaction, more intention. Life no longer seemed to pull responses out of you. Instead, it appeared to move according to a quiet, deliberate sense of direction. When clarity leads the way, interruptions lose their grip, and external noise struggles to influence the path being taken. What followed was even more striking to those watching from the outside. People in your surroundings began to sense a change that they could not easily define or explain. Conversations that once stretched longer now became more concise, as if unnecessary words naturally fell away. The atmosphere in exchanges felt different, subtle yet undeniable. Some individuals leaned closer, drawn by the calm presence that now seemed to surround you, while others gradually stepped back, unable to adjust to an energy they could no longer easily influence or predict. These shifts were not interpreted as losses but rather as a natural refinement of connections. Your state of alignment appeared to reorganize the environment around you, allowing only what resonated to remain present. It was not about withdrawal or separation, but about precision and balance taking shape in real time. The surrounding world began to mirror an internal order that was growing stronger. Less confusion, fewer unnecessary distractions, and a clearer sense of priority guiding everything forward with quiet stability. That kind of coherence is rare, and once achieved, it becomes self-sustaining. The report stated that your life was no longer shaped by reaction, but by resonance. Then came a realization that reframed everything they thought they knew about you. Your restraint was not hesitation, it was mastery. You knew when to pause, not because you were unsure, but because you understood timing. The investigation noted that you allowed situations to reveal themselves fully before stepping in. You waited for truth to rise on its own, knowing it always does. This patience gave you an advantage others never saw coming. While they rushed to secure outcomes, you secured alignment. While they chased momentum, you waited for inevitability. One line captured this perfectly. This individual does not rush outcomes. Outcomes arrive when they are ready. That understanding placed you beyond competition, because competition requires urgency, and you had outgrown it. As the investigation reached its final reflections, one truth stood undeniable. Your power does not come from control. It comes from clarity. You do not need to dominate spaces to influence them. Your presence alone shifts the atmosphere. This was observed repeatedly. Meetings changed tone when you spoke. Silence deepened when you listened. Decisions carried more weight when you were involved. None of this was forced. It was natural authority, the kind that cannot be taught or imitated. The report admitted that your influence grows the less you try to assert it. That paradox became the clearest marker of your evolution. You had moved from proving to being, and being requires no effort. Now receive this final message of this part, because it prepares you for what is unfolding next. The investigation confirmed that your future will unfold through alignment, not struggle, through precision, not pressure, through clarity, not noise. Those who once questioned your direction will soon question their own timing. Those who watch silently will finally understand why you were never meant to move loudly. And when the next chapter opens, it will not feel dramatic. It will feel right, because the most powerful transformations do not announce themselves. They simply arrive, my beloved child. As everything settled into this new stillness, the investigation uncovered a final pattern that reframed your entire journey. It revealed that your life was never about arrival, but about calibration. Every delay refined your discernment. Every disappointment trained your perception. Every quiet season tuned your awareness. The report stated that what appeared as waiting was actually preparation occurring at a depth few ever reach. You were learning how to stand without leaning, how to choose without fear, how to move without force. This was not accidental. It was deliberate design. The investigators noted that people like you do not rush into visibility, because visibility arrives when foundation is complete, and yours was being reinforced in ways that cannot be seen, only felt. That realization silenced any remaining doubt about your direction. They also discovered something profoundly rare about your inner world. You no longer confuse peace with stagnation. You understand that calm is not the absence of movement, but the presence of certainty. The investigation tracked how you remained steady, while others around you chased reassurance. You did not fill silence with noise. You did not fill space with explanation. You trusted the unseen process. That trust altered outcomes before they even formed. One observation stood out with unmistakable clarity. This individual does not fear stillness because they know movement will come when it matters. That level of trust cannot be manufactured. It can only be earned through endurance. And you had earned it fully. As this awareness deepened, the investigation highlighted a shift in how challenges approached you. Problems no longer arrived as threats. They arrived as confirmations. Each obstacle revealed strength you already possessed. Every delay seemed to reveal priorities you had already begun to understand more clearly, as if life itself was syncing with your internal clarity rather than disrupting it. It was never randomness, but a subtle form of alignment. Gradually, your inner direction began influencing external situations, shaping how events unfolded around you. Resistance, once something that slowed you down, started functioning differently. Instead of pushing you off course, it began offering feedback, showing you where refinement was still needed. This shift marked a deeper transition in you, from simply trying to survive circumstances to actively shaping them with awareness. You were no longer just reacting to life as it came. You were participating in it with intention, choosing responses rather than impulses. What stood out most was how you handled uncertainty. While many seek certainty to feel secure, you allowed ambiguity to exist without panic, observing it rather than fighting it. Instead of constantly asking what would happen next, your attention shifted toward who you were becoming in the process. That change in focus quietly transformed everything. Confidence stopped depending on outcomes and instead became rooted in identity itself. Once that foundation settled, external instability lost much of its power over you. The sense emerging from all of this was simple yet profound. Your path was not chaotic, but increasingly precise. What once felt distant now feels closer, and what once seemed unclear is beginning to take shape. The deeper realization is that you were never being tested for worthiness, but prepared for steadiness in what follows. Everything moving forward reflects that quiet preparation, where clarity replaces confusion and stability emerges as your natural state of being now fully established.